Hello, Harlequins, Jesters, Jokers, and Fools.
Welcome to episode 3 of What Happens in the Crypt.
This time, we're talking about the 1988 film Killer Klowns from Outer Space.
There's no real trigger warnings here. There's just gore, there's violence, there's not even any nudity, unless you're afraid of clowns.
If you are, this is your absolute nightmare, and you probably should not watch this.
Because these clowns are scary.
And there's a lot of them.
So this story is about a group of aliens who look like clowns, and they land in a small town to cause chaos, kill, and capture humans to use as a food source. Kind of your typical alien invasion type storyline, but they are clowns.
This movie was written and directed and produced by the Chiodo brothers, Charles, Edward, and Stephen. Stephen?
I'm not sure. I think Stephen.
The brothers grew up as huge monster movie lovers, and as kids made their own short films on Super 8.
They're also known for their puppeteering and effects skills on projects like Critters, which is amazing, Team America, and Elf.
Before getting too deep into the story, I think we should point out that this movie does the whole blonde girlfriend thing differently, which I really liked.
Debbie, who's the main protagonist, is played by Suzanne Snyder, and she's really the voice of reason and the only one to believe what's going on and try to direct others. Her only real downfall is that she's stuck in a little bit of a love triangle with the police officer in the story and her current date of the night.
Yeah, but I really liked what they did there. I like that they made it like they did it differently. It's the woman isn't just the dumb bimbo. She's the smart one. These men are the dumb bimbos who don't believe her at first or don't fully understand what's going on. And she's like, this is how it is. This is what we need to do. Shut up and believe me. I'm the smart one here.
She has no shame in going to the police station and saying that they went into an alien circus tent and that they have to warn the town.
The movie starts at the local makeout spot of the town, and all over the town, people see this shooting star that is way too close and way too big to be a shooting star. But our main character, Debbie, also realizes that. Luckily, she's the only one who does, and realizes that something had fallen from the sky and landed in the forest nearby.
So Debbie and her date from Makeout Point take off to go find what the shooting star was, and that's when they come across the circus tent / alien spaceship, and they discover the Killer Klowns. Yeah,
they actually go into the ship. Scenes like these are why this movie is such a classic, because it's just so outrageous and memorable in many ways. The clowns have so many different ways of killing people, and it's just so unique how everything is designed and how everything looks and acts.
Yeah, it's meant to be comical, but it also is a little scary. It looks good enough to be like, oh no. But also, we're talking about, my favorite scene. There's a whole part where the clown is creating shadow puppets on the wall, and these people at a bus stop are just watching. And I think it's hilarious. I said that one of the shadow puppets looks like Christopher Columbus, but Sean said it's apparently from a famous George Washington painting.
Yes. George Washington.
So the clown is creating these ridiculous puppets, and it starts off with a bunny rabbit, and then it turns into a hula dancing woman, and then this George Washington boat scene, and then a T-Rex that actually eats everyone at the bus stop. And that whole scene was done with stop motion, right?
Yeah, the T-Rex is stop motion.
The T-Rex is stop motion.
The shadow puppet.
And it looks really convincing. It doesn't look cheap. It doesn't look like bad CGI. It just really looks like this shadow puppet comes to life and eats the characters.
My favorite scene is actually one of the quote-unquote scarier scenes. So there's a cop in the film. So there's the boyfriend cop, hunky, younger cop, and then there's the old
ornery guy.
Yeah, he's a dick.
Yeah.
Mooney. He actually foreshadows my favorite scene earlier when he yells to the younger cop, you can't, what is it? You can make a dummy of yourself, but you're not going to make a dummy out of me. So
then he ends up being a dummy.
The clown actually comes into the police station, and then the younger cop, his name is Dave. Dave comes into the police station, like, to see what's going on. How come nobody's answering him? And you just see the back of this clown, and then it turns around, and then lifts up Mooney's lifeless body, and he's painted his face. Yeah,
it's like the rosy red cheeks that are like really classic, like ventriloquist doll with like the lines on the side of his mouth.
Yeah, and then he talks through his dead body, and he says,
"Don't worry, Dave. All we want to do is kill you."
Yeah, it's creepy.
And it's in his voice, but it's distorted,
like garbled.
Yeah. And then the clown just pulls his hand out of him and like splatters blood.
Yeah, like squelchy, it's gross.
And then his body falls over. It's just that's one of the moments where I was like, how did they come up with that?
Yeah.
That's insane.
Yeah. It's definitely one of the few scenes that I found to be like scary.
I think it's the talking.
Yeah.
Because the clowns throughout the whole movie can't talk. They don't. They have their own weird little alien language.
Yeah.
But for whatever reason, sometimes they mimic perfectly other people's voices.
So that happens again later when they end up kidnapping Debbie, and they knock on the door, and they end up using the voice of her boyfriend, saying, like, "Let me in, it's fine." And she opens the door, and there's 3 clowns standing there.
One of the most memorable scenes, and the one that's very easily quotable, is the scene where there's like this rough-looking biker gang outside in this alleyway, and then
looking for like low-budget 80s
low-budget
biker
80s
gang.
Quote on, like they're wearing leather jackets and stuff.
Right.
So Shorty, my favorite clown, shows up on his little tricycle, his little training wheels bike.
And so when Shorty gets there, the bikers are like, "Hey, nice bike," like just being huge jerks. And they end up smashing his tricycle. It's horrible.
Right in front of him.
It squeaks to death. Like, it's pretty sad for Shorty.
And then he shows up he like disappears for a second and then just back up with boxing gloves.
Right.
And then the one biker says that just destroyed his bike says...
the most quotable line of the movie. "What are you gonna do? Knock my block off?"
What are you gonna do? Knock my block off?
And then Shorty uppercuts him in the head so hard, his head just goes flying into a trash can.
But it's like there's no blood. It's like a clean cut. His head just pops right off of his body.
Yeah, and then but they do that thing where like so the head goes flying and then it cuts back to the body and then it falls over.
Yeah, like collapses.
Yeah, it collapses and then all the bikers like run away.
Yeah, it's amazing. One of the more comical and very clown-like deaths is later on in the movie. They are approaching like the Funland area, which is where the climax of the movie happens, and there's a security guard there, and he's like, "What are you boys doing?" And they whale him with pies, and it cuts away. When it comes back, he's like melted down into an ice cream sundae.
Yeah, there's just a goopy pile left of him.
Right, and then Shorty, also Shorty again, of course, walks by with a giant cherry and sets it on top of the security guard sundae. Yeah. It's amazing.
And later the other characters find that sundae and he's just bones.
Right. They're like, "What is that, ice cream?" And there's like a human skeleton arm inside.
To make all the clowns, they used molds so that they could make, more than one. They didn't have to do a custom mask every single time. They made 5 different molds for the clowns. They did 1 round, 1 triangular, 1 inverted triangle, and 1 peanut shape.
Right, and then the 5th mold that they did was the unique one that they had for Clownzilla.
Yep, and to make them look different, they would add, different hair, different paint.
Right.
different makeup.
Because you can tell that with the amount of detail that are in the faces of the clowns, there's no way that there is actually 50 different ones, but they do such a good job dressing up the masks so that, like, there's one with, like, a green mohawk and different eye makeup so that it's not nearly, it doesn't look very much like the other ones.
Mm-hmm. And they would have different outfits.
Right.
Like their shoes would be different color. They had their like onesies.
Right, and the body shapes as well, because as we were watching it last, like, some of them look like peanuts, like, the way their bodies look. Some of them are taller, longer, leaner. Some of them are really, like, bottom heavy, so it really helps make it seem like there's a whole race of them.
Yeah, it's so funny when some of them have to, like, waddle around.
They do waddle. So speaking of the waddling, that was actually one of their direction notes from the directors, was to walk like they were underwater.
It was actually all of their movements.
Of their movements.
Always act like you're underwater.
Yeah. So it's funny when you watch it, it's like, is it just because of the shoes that makes them walk weird? And then you find out that they're actually they're purposefully doing that, and they're acting like they're underwater to give that effect.
Yeah, they're always exaggerating their movements.
And it's slow.
Yeah, and it's slow. But it's not like weird. It's not like bad. It's
right.
just, it's different. It makes him feel more alien.
Exactly.
Clownzilla, who we actually just mentioned, was played by one of the three brothers who made the movie.
So the way they made him look so gigantic was all by forced perspective. It's really just the regular bro wearing this costume, but they did shots like from behind his head and above so that it looked like he was like 20 feet tall.
Yeah, he would be literally 20 feet up. He would just be standing on a higher table or platform.
And for some reason, it really reminds me of Bowser, like from Mario.
It's because his head... There's something about his head that is more like lizard, almost like snapping turtle-ish. And then he has like that shell.
And because I think of how they shot it with everything being from like behind his head is very much Bowser.
There's a lot of behind the scenes footage of him in that full Clownzilla suit. It's actually really funny, especially when the actor is just talking through the suit coming out of Clownzilla. It's actually really funny, and they slowed down his movements in the actual movie. So he was saying in reality, he was actually like hitting the ice cream truck as fast as he could.
Right.
And you can actually watch behind the scenes of him throwing the ice cream truck, and it's actually really quick.
Right.
It's a quick movement, but it's really funny when he'll throw it and they'll be like, no, cut it. He's just like,
Right. And they did that too. They had it slowed down to also like add to the idea that he was so gigantic.
Yeah.
And I know that you know that just from working in film, that's a way to make it look more exaggerated.
Yeah.
Would that be the right way to say it? But yeah, the behind the scenes of him with the tiny ice cream truck are really comical because it's just like a dude in a clown costume throwing a tiny ice cream truck. It's hilarious. So they actually made this movie in 36 days. And with having such like a tight time restriction, there was bound to be a lot of mistakes and things that didn't go so well. So there were quite a few mishaps in this movie.
They totally ruined a Jeep that they were just borrowing. The production did not own... So, in the movie, they find this Jeep that's their friend's, and the interior of the Jeep is completely coated with that cotton candy cocoon. Mm-hmm. And they were told that they could get that out of the Jeep, that it would wipe off. But it did not.
Right. And with there only being so many days to shoot this stuff, it was kind of like they didn't get to test all of the things. So it was like they filled that car with the fake cotton candy and it ended up being like $3,000 to fix it. They ruined the whole interior.
Yeah. And there's the car chase scene where a car gets chased off the bridge.
I love that scene too.
That scene is amazing. But the car that drives off the bridge, it was originally supposed to flip. It was supposed to flip and roll because what's actually in the movie is not really that dramatic. It just kind of flops down.
It's a dud.
It's a dud, but they only had one take to do that. And the cable that was supposed to roll the car and actually move it broke.
Right.
So what you see is what That's what they got. They didn't have another chance. They didn't have another car.
Right. They didn't have another car. They didn't have time to do that again. And they just kind of went with it. And I think it just looks like, oh, it went over the bridge. Oh, well, it's not dramatic, but it looks okay.
It looks good enough. And then it bursts into flames.
Yeah. So there's a lot of really amazing props and special effects in this, but one of the things that I found that was super funny was the popcorn gun, which only is in one scene, and it's in the very beginning when Debbie and her boyfriend are running away. The clown shoots the baby popcorn at them, and that's it. It's just a really quick cut. We find out that that gun actually worked and really did shoot popcorn, but it cost them $7,000.
Yeah, it was like the most expensive prop
of the movie. And it's so silly, and that's the only time you ever see it.
Yeah, and I'm pretty sure they show a close-up of it.
Yeah,
they
right.
do. They show a close-up just because they're like, it costs us this much money. Right. We have to show it. It has to be in the movie.
I just love the idea of like contacting someone, being like, we need this laser gun that really shoots popcorn and it has to work, and someone being like, that will be $7,000, and they're like, cool, do it.
Well, yeah, because it's an actual like air compressor that's built into it, but I mean, still.
Yeah.
Something that seemed so simple on the movie turned out to be one of the biggest challenges, and that was just the pies.
Right. When they were actually filming scenes with the pies, it ended up happening that it was hurting the actors because of the pie tin. So they tried to do like whipped cream and all of the other things, but it didn't look the same. So they actually used real pies to throw at the actors. But the pie tin was bruising their faces and it was painful. So they actually created some sort of like, in my brain, it's like a hair tie system, like an elastic, so that when they threw the pies, the tin would still be attached to their hand and it wouldn't hit anyone.
Yeah, you can actually see a behind-the-scenes video of them shooting. So the very last shot is all the main characters getting pied in the face.
Right.
And you can actually watch it, and they all get hit, and one of the actors just goes, what does he say? He's like,
sure. 1, 2, pies.
That hurt like shit!
Cut!
It's
right
crazy
after they say cut.
Yeah, it's crazy to think that a pie to the face would hurt, but I guess when you have the metal behind it, it probably wouldn't feel great. And
Yeah.
a pie is heavy.
Yeah,
like,
pie's pretty
just by
heavy,
itself.
The tin coming right at your face.
Yeah.
And, I mean, they gotta, like, you know, they have to be off camera, so they're throwing it
Really?
or dropping it pretty hard.
Yeah, and far.
I always feel like it's necessary to talk about not just the director or who is the head cinematographer. You know, there's a lot of crew positions, there's a lot of things that go unnoticed on a movie set. So I wanted to talk about two specific people here that worked on the movie. Gene Warren Jr., who was the special effects supervisor for this movie. He did some awesome effects, such as, you know, the ray guns shooting the cotton candy beam. That was so cool. You know, he didn't have... How do you tell somebody, I want a laser gun that turns people into cotton candy,
Right.
make it look good, like that,
Yeah.
and it looks really cool.
Yeah.
Or like the clowns, when they get shot in the nose, they start spinning and spinning and spinning, and it does this crazy like light show
Yeah.
before they explode. And to do that, they did, what was it?
So they actually had mirrors that they like smashed up, and they kind of called it like a disco ball type setup for the lighting. And they had it on a thing that spun like a disco ball, and there's a green light behind it so that it spun around and it reflected off the walls. But at the same time, they actually had the actor that was the dying clown spinning. And they sped it up, but so it's like the light was spinning, the clown was spinning to create that like weird green light effect.
Another huge thing, I think it's the most important decision they made in the movie was their use of animatronics.
For sure.
Dwight Roberts was one of the guys behind that. The animatronics in this movie are what makes the clowns feel alive and not just people in masks. So each shot had a different level to it. So like sometimes the close-ups there would be nobody in it. It would just be a head. but the animatronics let the eyes blink and let the lips move and the cheeks move. So if the clown smiles, the cheeks go up with it, and sometimes it's like their ears wiggling with it. And it makes the clowns feel alive, not just, people in a mask.
Yeah, they really worked hard with those animatronics to like mimic really strong facial expressions and human expressions. Like when someone smiles, their eyes twinkle, crinkle a little bit, your ears move. They made sure that all of that happened underneath the mask.
And that was actually done with like an RC control. There was a person, an engineer off camera, who's standing by and making sure that the right thing goes off at the right time with a controller.
Yeah, and they did quite a bit of simpler effects as well under his direction. Specifically, there's that scene where, I don't remember the clown's name. Is that Tiny? That sucks from the straw?
Yeah, I think so.
Okay. So there's the scene where Tiny is taking a drink out of one of the cotton candy cocoons, and it actually looks like he's like sucking the straw, and it looks really believable. And they actually just did that with twine and pulling each side of the mouth to make it do the sucking motion.
Yeah, they did. They actually were on set and they didn't know how they were going to do that. And they actually did it on the fly.
Yeah, which is crazy because it looks really good. It's really believable. You're like, wow, that clown is really drinking blood out of that cotton candy sack.
Drinking out of that cotton candy cocoon with a melted person in there.
Yeah. One of the other special effects that I found super interesting and that I don't really know anything about is matte paintings. So that was one of the like cheap skills that they used to really add depth to the movie and make it look better.
Yeah, because matte paintings, they were mostly used in older films. Newer films just use CG. But back then they didn't have the technology. And obviously when they're in the ship, and there's hundreds of these cotton candy cocoons. You can't make all of those.
Right.
They didn't have the budget for that. But what you can do is you can do a really highly detailed painting, and then just put that in the background, and then voila, you have a new background that's full of these cotton candy cocoons, and it also makes the set bigger. They actually did this a lot in this movie, like at the end, where the carnival spaceship is flying up.
Right.
They just did a matte painting of a new sky, and then the explosion that takes place.
Yeah, it's really cool. It's definitely innovative. Like, for the time, it was kind of relevant, and that's what people did. But, like, in 2020, it's something that, like, it's interesting to find out that that's how they accomplished something that came out around the 80s that time.
Mm-hmm, yeah, it was also done in, like, Tron. They did several matte paintings in this movie actually, because when the ship crashes in the forest is also a matte painting.
One of the funnier looking scenes is that chase scene.
And not because they're clowns.
Yeah. It's not clown funny.
No.
So where they were filming this scene, it's where the ice cream truck is chasing the clown car and the cop car is chasing the ice cream truck. It's comical as it is. But because of where they were filming, they weren't allowed to go like 100 miles an hour. It was residential.
Nah, they were going like 30 tops.
Yeah. So what they did instead to make up for that is they sped up the footage, but it makes it comically look like a cartoon.
It almost
just
makes it
silly.
look stop motion.
Yeah, it looks really silly, and it's when you watch that scene, it's like, why does that look so weird? Like, clearly they're not going fast.
Yeah.
This isn't a high-speed chase. But I think they just thought they could, like, cut that corner.
They did the best they could do. They locked down the shot, so it's on a tripod, so, like, the camera movement isn't weird. But you can tell that's sped up at least, like, 3 times. Like, it makes it look like herky-jerky.
Yeah.
Where, like, there's,
herky-jerky.
Because a car, even a car going straight on a straight flat road, has other movements to it.
Right.
A car shakes. But when you speed it up that much, you just by looking at it, you might not know what's wrong.
Exactly.
But your brain knows that's not how things move.
There's something wrong here.
There's something wrong here, and I don't know what it is.
Exactly. This movie is super well known for having its own theme song.
Oh, yeah.
The music in this movie is wonderful. It'll get stuck in your head the whole time we've been recording this. I can just hear it in my brain. But the composer was John Missari, and they actually had like 30 other applicants for composer, and they asked all of them to pick a scene from the movie and create music for it, and they liked his the best. And then also the theme song is by a band called The Dickies.
I did not know that, actually. Before recording this, I did not know that. That's interesting.
And if you really like the music, it is on Spotify.
I also did not know that. I know what I'm going to be listening to later. We always do locations of notes, like what's a noteworthy location, or what was a cool film spot. But this one is the one they made.
Right.
So their set, yeah. The ship is actually really cool and very Wonka.
Yeah, that's what I definitely think of.
The ship is just so unique. Because it's all like clown carnival themed-ish.
It's all bright colors and trick doors, and it's a spaceship, so there's a lot going on there.
And there's the one room where there's like all those alien creatures.
Yeah.
And they're running through it, and the one hallway leads them to this giant room, which leads them to this door that's in the mouth of the anglerfish thing.
Yeah.
That was wild.
Yeah. So that whole chase scene where the clowns are after Debbie and the dudes, it kind of shows them going through an anglerfish, then these like tricky doors, then
they open a door and then there's another door and it keeps getting smaller.
And smaller, which is very Willy Wonka.
Yeah.
And then there's almost like that carnival ride where the walls shake back and forth and you have to kind of find your footing and get through it. So that's really fun.
We briefly mentioned before that the clowns can die, but there's so many scenes where like they'll get shot and nothing happens, or the Mooney hits one over the head and nothing happens. It's I don't know what to say.
So of course every movie monster has their like Achilles heel, and here it is their nose.
Of course, because they're clowns.
Duh.
But whenever their nose gets like shot or hit hard enough, it like shatters.
It like pops.
And then
with
they
confetti.
Spin super fast. And they actually, that was real. They did that. They spun the clowns, and there's actually behind the scenes of them falling over
because they're going so fast. But it's really clever to do that kind of Achilles heel idea, like popping the nose, because of course every clown has a big red nose, and it's just really smart that was the thing that would get them. For this movie, we decided to track not just the on-screen deaths, but also the method of execution. So we're calling these the carnival casualties.
And there were much more casualties this week than last.
Yeah. There's a lot of cotton candy bodies, like cocoons that we see throughout the movie, but we're strictly talking about the ones that we see on screen here. So we're talking about we actually see them getting shot or killed, as opposed to like the cocoons that drop from buildings and stuff.
The blocks getting knocked off.
Exactly.
Our on-screen death count this week was 13. Starting things off, we'll go with the cotton candy ray gun deaths, and there are 4 of them.
After that, we have our shadow puppet deaths, which there were 5.
Love that shadow puppet T-Rex.
So good.
Now there's the invisible clown car, where we have a clown show up next to a guy driving his car, and then the clown driving that invisible car knocks him off.
Yeah.
And it blows up.
So
Oh, that's just one, by the way.
There's just one. So we also have a party popper / ventriloquist death, and this is where we're talking about Mooney.
My favorite scene.
So there is a part where the clown blows one of those party popper things and it strangles him, but then the next scene we see him as the ventriloquist doll. So cause of death is kind of murky. It is one of those two things.
But both are pretty cool.
Yeah.
Now we have our popcorn baby deaths. So that's the $7,000 prop that we were talking about earlier. Yeah. It makes these little snaky clown
a
babies.
snake with a clown's head, essentially.
Yeah, and it drags some poor soul into a dumpster and devours him.
Yep, R.I.P. And finally, we have one death by getting their block knocked off.
Love it.
The ending of this movie ends on a pretty, like, happy note.
Yeah,
where
all the cops show up and the clowns are defeated.
The spaceship explodes, everyone's happy. But then when you think about it, every town person that was cotton candy cocooned just blew up in that ship.
Yeah, and there were still people in those balloons.
Yeah.
Because the people that get caught, so there's another gun that shoots balloons that keeps the people alive. Mm-hmm. They're just all dead now. Yeah. This ship exploded with a bunch of people still on it.
And they're all celebrating, and it's like, they all died.
So everyone you know is dead now.
Yep, and then they just all get pied in the face.
But it's funny.
The end.
The end. They're all, yep.
The end, everyone's dead.
Obviously, from what we've been saying, we love this movie. From the effects, to the sets, to the silliness of the dialogue, it has it all. We are really, really hoping that Sci-Fi can actually finally strike a deal and get a sequel made.
Right, so there's been rumors and pre-production on a sequel, which would be Killer Klowns 3D, which would be amazing. But it's kind of been back and forth as far as who owns it, but it sounds like it might actually happen soon.
Yeah, the brothers are talking. They wanted like 5, 6, 7. They wanted a bunch of these movies. Right. I don't know if we need to go that high, but I want at least one more. It's so much fun.
I would accept a sequel. I think Killer Klowns 8 will probably suck, so hopefully we don't go that far, but 2 would be good.
I think 3 might be good.
This is available on Netflix, so easy enough. You or someone you know has Netflix, but...
Get their password.
Yeah. It's also available on YouTube with ads, so that's a second option.
I know you know somebody with Netflix. I know you do. Everybody knows somebody who actually pays for it. I'm actually that person.
Yeah. For next week's episode, we're going to be talking about The Witch, the 2015 film by Robert Eggers.
One of my favorite directors and filmmakers.
And it's one of my favorite movies ever.
I would like to live deliciously.
We're ready to live deliciously.